This is impressive. Marc Andreessen. Last we heard, he was telling us lies about Consumer Financial Protection Bureau on Joe Rogan's program. I mean, just out and out lies. Unless he's just a real moron about this stuff.
Saying the CFPB was debanking people when in fact they were doing the exact opposite of fighting banks, debanking people.
And then the Republicans in the House and Senate repealed the rule that the CFPB used to get people rebanked. Which I guess I don't know if he ever went anywhere to complain about that. And this guy also was at the nexus, apparently, of some big chat groups in the run-up to the election between a lot of like right-wing people and tech bros, some of whom were super Nazi-ish, apparently, on these chats.
Well, Andreessen himself had to apologize to the continent of India for saying that the British Raj was good for them.
Well, I mean, it's like akin to like, slavery was good. You got a lot of people got free room and board.
Yep.
I just like, do these people not hear themselves? Listen to what Marc Andreessen says.
Every great venture capitalist in the last 70 years has missed most of the great companies of his generation, right? Like, so the great VCs have a success, record of getting, 2 out of 10 or something of the great companies of the decade, right? And so, if it was a science, you could eventually have somebody who just like that.
Now, pause it for a second. The great VCs have a 20% batting record. Now, I'm not sure I understand what this means. He means that for every 10 companies you invest in, maybe only 2, if you're the best at it, do well. Yes. Now, there's no way to measure all the potential companies they did not invest in, that VCs did not invest in, that could have been huge successes. So 20% is not even the success rate of these venture capitalists, because it's not including all the ones they failed to invest in. This is just a measure of like what the rate of return is. This is just an algorithm for what they can expect to actually get some money back. But in terms of like what companies they missed, we don't really know. We don't know what could have been a really innovative product or helpful to society, or was not profitable enough to be helpful to society. But he's just talking about profit. So understand, like, this is all graded on a curve. Good.
The great VCs have a success, record of getting, 2 out of 10 or something of the great companies of the decade, right? And so, if it was a science, you could eventually have somebody who just like dials it in and gets 8 out of 10. But in the real world, it's not like that. You're in the fluke business, and so there's an intangibility to it. There's a taste aspect, the human relationship aspect, the psychology. By the way, a lot of it is psychological analysis, like who are these people, how do they react under pressure. How do you keep them from falling apart? How do you keep them going crazy? How do you keep them going crazy yourself?
I would just like to replay that part of how do you keep them from going crazy, because I think that is actually the most pertinent question that can be asked about this.
How do they react under pressure? How do you keep them from falling apart? How do you keep them going crazy? How do you keep them going crazy yourself? You end up being a psychologist half the time. And so like it is possible, I don't want to be definitive, but like it's possible that is quite literally timeless. And when the AIs are doing everything else, like that may be one of the last remaining fields that people are still doing.
Do you know how like fascinatingly dumb that comment is? Just fascinatingly dumb. I wonder if there's any other jobs where people are like functioning as like psychiatrists, they're therapists to people, or like teaching them or helping them not go crazy, or like all of social work and teaching and therapy. I wonder if that's like that too. Oh, AI can replace that. I mean, it's just, there's this expectation that these people who fluked, as he said, who fluked, are intelligent. And I'm sorry. I'm not saying the guy's a total idiot, but I think what happens a lot of times is that people of moderate intelligence get lucky, and instead of attributing it to luck, attribute it to some unique quality they have, some higher intelligence, some deeper sensitivity, some whatever it is. And that begins to corrupt their intelligence and undermine their intelligence and cause them to say things that they don't question. They don't even realize if it comes out of my mouth, it's pure gold.
They think of themselves as philosopher kings. I would recommend this. This is over a decade old. This was at the height of the sort of venture capitalist, I would say, madness that this country's gone through, trusting these sorts of folks with our economic priorities. Diane Mulcahy, I believe for the Harvard Business Review, 6 Myths About Venture Capitalists, has a bunch of good info about how this entire industry is basically a joke. And these guys, they're not taking risks with their own money. They're spending other people's money. Their main income isn't, like you said, like because it makes all these good businesses, because it's a fluke business. They're guys like that get fees for investing other people's money regardless of the performance. Like, this is a joke that we look to these people as the stewards of innovation. And that's this. People like him are why we're losing to China.
Violet Orchid says 20% sure seems like it's less than randomly choosing.
Their return on investment is not good for venture capital. And also, I would just say business startups have been tanking since the 70s as monopoly gets worse. All these guys do these podcasts talking about it's like some era of kumbaya, while monopolies just eat up the ability to start a new business in this country.
Can you put the picture of Andreessen back up? Or just...
Now, people are really concerned about what's going on with his head.
That was what I was going to point to. I don't want to be ableist, or I don't know if he has a problem, but maybe that's why he's smarter than all of us, because look at that dome.
Well,
that's why Tim Pool wears a beanie.
You know, I don't think you would call that a dome. You might call that a steeple.
Cone? Remember the cone heads?
Yes, of course. It is possible, and this is one theory that I've heard, and I know I'm not, there's one theory I've heard, that his head got stuck in between one of those doors that go around like this. What do you call those?
Revolving door?
Revolving doors. And it just pressured him, and that's why he's talking like this.
I think it's a perfect shape for him to shove it up his ass.
I thought the smarter you get, maybe, that's why they call it higher intelligence, because it pushes the head up.
About 3 inches higher than it usually is.
Exactly. Calling from a 514 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from? 514?
Hello, this is Snorser from Montreal.
This is who?
Snorser. I'm using my I am name.
Ah, okay. Snorserer from Montreal. What's up?
Yeah, I hate to do this and be all parasocial right now, but I need to share this. Earlier, I sent in an IM. You read my name and immediately got distracted talking about Social Security again, and then moved on. And I told yourself to give yourself a shofar, because today you're like a kid visiting the fireman, and I wanted you to get the press to fire him.
That's pretty good. Yes, I will do that. It was sort of like that.
In all seriousness, I wanted to talk about one of two things, either obviously being from Montreal. Yesterday's episode was great. I could talk more about the Canadian election, or just my recent strategy to radicalize normal people and other people around your life, whichever one is more interesting to you.
Actually, the last one probably is.
Yeah. So I'm going to go through this quickly. Essentially, I'm starting from the idea of whenever you're at a family event or around people and you get told, like, hey, whatever is going on, like I remember back when the campus protests here were happening in Montreal, and it was super tame compared to anything that happened over in the United States. I would hear some family members tell me that, like, oh, it's not that big a deal, or like, why are they protesting? It's not worth it, or we're not there yet, or all of that kind of stuff. And agree that at some point it is important to act, and it is important to act early, even, and I'm not condoning violence, but like if there is a point where eventually violence is warranted, then you should act before that point. And the best way to get that into the conversation easily is to joke about, time travel, baby Hitler, that kind of stuff. And then from there, you get people to essentially agree that, like, hey, World War II, like, it would have been bad if we did nothing and just let Germany do whatever. And then you can ask people, like, hey, if you were in Germany, when would you have acted? And then you can go through the timeline. And I'm not going to go into any specific examples here, but giving the examples, the timeline doesn't really matter if it's accurate, but you can say stuff like, hey, when Germany started doing this specific thing, like, would that have been warranted for you to act? And usually people will agree at some point where it's like, hey, when you put people in camps, and then you go, well, maybe you should have acted before going into camps. Like, what about the armbands? Like, was that enough for you to act? And then you walk back in the timeline until you get to petty bureaucratic stuff. And you can now tell them, like, well, right now we are way past the petty bureaucratic stuff. Like, we're already, Trump is sending people to El Salvador. There's all over the place. There's people being silenced for their speech. There's crazy stuff going on. And usually the person you're specifically talking to might not work on them, but then whoever's around in that room eventually is going to come back talking to you and be like, hey, what you said made sense, and then ask you more about stuff. That happened to me recently during a Easter getaway with the family, where I think one of my uncles is mad at me, but all of my cousins are super into politics now.
Well, that sounds great, and I think it's a good point. I mean, I appreciate the call. Let me just answer it off. But thanks for the call.
Yeah, thank you.
There's a certain amount of embarrassment you don't want to be considered as to be an alarmist, and you don't want to get too far ahead of of the idea of like we're headed to fascism, and so people, I don't know if this is the case, but I remember once hearing that a big source of drownings come because people are too embarrassed to say that they're drowning at one point and think they're going to be able to get out of it. And they don't do it. I mean, it's usually like panic, I think, with drownings, but that embarrassment sometimes plays into it too. They don't want it too early be like, wait a second, I got a problem here. Because they don't want the lifeguard to come jumping in. And I do think there is I don't know where this leads. I mean, but right now it seems like the race has started. I don't know where the finish line is, but it seems.
There's some stuff, some words from the judge as he freed Modawi said, describe him as a peaceful figure who seeks consensus in a highly charged political environment, but the judge added, even if he were a firebrand, his conduct is protected by the First Amendment. The court is aware that he has offended his political opponents and apparently given rise to concerns at the State Department that he is an obstacle to American foreign policy. Such conduct is insufficient to support a finding that he is in any way a danger, as we use that term in context of detention and release. Legal residents not charged with crimes or misconduct are being arrested and threatened with deportation for stating their views on the political issues of the day, Crawford said, citing the Red Scare and McCarthy-era targeting of people for their political views. The wheel of history has come around again, but as before, these times of excess will pass.
Hopefully. Yeah. It's not guaranteed. Yep. The thing about them passing is not guaranteed, but at least this guy's doing his part. Right. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah, it's better to show confidence after you've done what you can do.
Exactly. It really should be, as long as we uphold these principles, this era too will pass.
I've been watching the new Nathan Fielder show that someone brought up earlier. And the first episode is about airline crashes. And I've read this before as well as the show, but apparently most airline crashes are caused by a co-pilot being too scared to speak up to challenge the authority of the pilot.
That was a famous case study, I think, with Japanese pilots or something like that, because of more hierarchical societies afraid to go over the person who's directly above you.
Folks, this sound signals the the end of the call-in portion of the program, I'm going to read a couple of IMs, verified X user, Marc Andreessen. That's pretty stupid and good. Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.